Our topic today is about Rumi, and she is not only a Unitarian Universalist minister, but she also is a Rumi minister or clergy. I'm not. She'll share that more about that with you, but certainly she has the expertise, and she not only has the expertise for that, but Mellen is a seminary classmate of mine from Mobile, Lombard, and she is the person that helped me to understand the importance of covenants, not only congregational covenants, but covenants in small groups. Like in our classes we were having there at Mobile, Lombard, we had some difficulties, and she said, you know, if we had had a covenant, this would not have occurred. And we quickly decided we needed covenants for all our classes. Mellen has gone on to do great things with that in terms, she's almost the UU guru of small groups, covenants groups, and working with others and how to form those and work through those. She also does ministry there at her home in Vermont. And my son John recently got to know her when he was visiting up there. So good to have my good friend and fellow seminarian, fellow UU minister, the Reverend Dr. Mellen Kennedy. And I'm going to stop my share and so she can come on and share that time story for all ages with you.
Good morning, everyone. It is really a delight to be here. And y'all did the covenant, both of your congregations. And I just want to let you know that covenant that you say every week, guess where it came from, where great things like maple syrup come from, Vermont. It was written by L. Griswold Williams, a Universalist who served the church in Barre, Vermont, which I had the honor of serving as well. It was written in the 1930s. So that covenant has made its way all around our denomination. So I have a story for you. We're gonna explore Rumi today. So I brought a special guest. Hang on. Jalaluddin Rumi here at your service. Assalamu alaikum. I am the great Jalaluddin Rumi. Great, at least that's what people say. I'm a poet. I have many books that I've published, but what many people don't know about me is when I was a kid, I had a very interesting life. And I'm telling you this story about my life because I think you kids are going through a similar time right now, right? This is what happened to me. When I was 7 years old, I had a great life. I played with my friends. We went out, we ran around. We had a great time. We did fun things together. I went to school. I read books, and I liked to ride horses, all kinds of cool things. But then when I was 7 years old, something happened. It was an invasion. From far away came something that disrupted our whole lives. Everything I cared about, boom, disrupted. Can you relate? You're going through something similar? That's what I thought. Well, what happened to me when I was 7 years old is the invasion. People came from far away. They were Mongols, and they invaded our country, and they killed things, they burned things. It was terrible. But my dad and my mom said, let's get out of here. There's no point to stay. I was living in what we call Afghanistan now, the country of Afghanistan. So what did we do? We traveled, we traveled, we traveled, we traveled, and we traveled. Guess how many years I was on the road? 5. From when I was 7 years old till I was 13, we traveled and we traveled. Some of my best friends got to be camels. I love camels. So we traveled all around. I saw Mecca, I saw Medina, I saw faraway places. And when we were traveling, we often stopped along the way. And I heard so many great stories. People would sit around the campfires and sing songs and tell stories. In all my travels, I saw things I never would have seen. I met all kinds of people. And you know what? I found out most people are really good. Most people are really kind. And it was hard in some ways. And when we were sitting around the campfire and I would pretend to be asleep and I'd listen and I'd hear the adults talking. And sometimes they'd say, "Oh, poor Rumi." That's my name, Rumi. At least that's what people call me. It's actually Jalaluddin, but people call me Rumi for short. So I would hear people say, "Oh, poor little Jalaluddin, poor little Rumi." I'd be pretending I was sleeping. His whole life is disrupted. He's not at his home. There was the invasion. Oh, it's just terrible. Poor little Rumi. But you know what? I don't feel like poor little Rumi at all. I had a really interesting life. If I had stayed back in Afghanistan and haven't traveled all over, I wouldn't have met people. I wouldn't have had such interesting things. So you're going through a similar time, aren't you? You have a disruption, some fear. For us, it was the fear of the invasion, those people coming from far away who disrupted everything. And for you, it's a different fear, isn't it? Your fear is a fear about an illness, but it's similar because it made a mess of all the things. And for me, it shaped me, but it didn't break me. Those adults who used to say, "Oh, poor Rumi, this is terrible." Nah. It made me stronger. It exposed me to things I never would have seen before, things I never would have done before. It was interesting. And like I said, some of my best friends got to be camels. So life on the road for 5 years, and finally we went to Turkey, to Konya, Turkey. That my dad got a job there. And so we settled there. And I'm not sorry that I had that big disruption when I was a kid. It made me strong. It gave me an interesting life. You know, at times when we were on the road and I was feeling sad, you know what I would do? I'd put one hand up to the sky. That was a great thing about traveling. We were in nature all the time. See the big mountains, see the birds, see all kinds of things. So I put one hand up to the sky and one hand down to the earth, and I would just turn. I would move. I would turn, and I would turn, and I would turn, and I would turn. And I felt great. I didn't just sit there like a clod, feeling sorry for myself because my life was disrupted. I moved around. I enjoyed it. So how about you? What are you doing? Do you hear the adults saying, "Oh, poor little you"? If you hear them saying something like that, you know what you can say? Don't worry about it. I'm having an interesting life, just like Rumi. It's shaping me. It's not breaking me. I'm cool. Don't worry about me. I'm like Rumi. Jalaluddin Rumi, at your service. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. And what a wonderful treat for all of us to actually have Rumi come to our service and visit with us for our time for all ages. We so appreciate that. And I think not just children, but adults who've been disrupted can say the same thing. I'm going to be like Rumi and let this shape me, but not break me. I hope so. Well, I'm going to share my screen again. And this next thing we have in our service is our special music that's brought to you by our quartet. And since it is Black History Month, They are going to sing Lift Every Voice and Sing. And I encourage you, when the music starts, there's a little bit of history behind it, but when it starts, if you feel like it, you can rise in body and spirit and sing along. The words will be there for you.
It's respectful to rise, and in the spirit of Rumi.
Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise, high in the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the darkness has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chasing rod, fretting the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat, and on our weary feet, come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that the tears has been watered. We have come treading a path through the blood of the slaughtered. Up from the gloomy past, till we stand at last, where the white gleam of a bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places I thought where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowing beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Thank you to Abby, Linda, Chris, and John for that wonderful rendition. As we enter our time of silence, meditation in silence, I have a quote from Rumi. And after I share this quote, I will stop sharing my screen and you can share the silence and meditate upon these words. And then Reverend Dr. Mellen Kennedy will come on to share with you. Hear the words of Rumi. Stop the words now. Open the window in the center of your chest and let the spirits fly in and out. May it be so.
Thank you so much for sharing that silence. Hear this poem from Rumi. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who sweep your house violently, empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. The words of Rumi. The poem is often called The Guest House. This being human, it's a guest house. All kinds of things come into our experience. In this time of disruption, Rumi is a great place to go for inspiration, for hope, for sustenance. And when you hear more about Rumi's life, you'll understand more why turning to his wisdom at this time is a great practice. And we've heard a little bit about his childhood. Do you know about Rumi? Are you familiar with him? These are some of his poetry books. He was a prolific poet. He is the most popular translated into English poet in the English language. And he's a Muslim. He was a Sufi. And he lived more than 800 years ago. He was born in 1207, as I said in the kid's story. He was born in what we call now Afghanistan. And he died in 1273 in Konya, Turkey. His father, Rumi's father, was a great teacher. He was a jurist. He was a theologian. He was a fakir. He preached. He was a great, great teacher. And Rumi followed in his father's footsteps. In those many years when they were traveling, when Rumi was a boy, he studied. He studied Sufism under one of his father's students. And when they settled in Konya, Turkey, the reason they settled there is because Rumi's father got a job there as a great spiritual teacher in Konya. And so Rumi spent his young years just absorbing and learning. And when Rumi's father passed away, Rumi inherited the position. And that happened, Rumi was in his 20s when that happened. I think he was about 24 when his father passed. So Rumi, like his father, was a preacher, was a teacher, he was a jurist. He was the person you went to in the city of Konya. He was a great, much respected, much beloved leader. And he was loved not just by the Muslims, but by all of the people, because he was wise. There in Konya, there were Christians, there were Muslims, there were Jews, there were pagan, there were all kinds of people, Sufis, and Rumi was beloved by all of them. So here he is, at the height of his career. He was age 37, and something happened. Boom. Something happened that shook his world. There he was, the respected, beloved person. This is what happened. So he's at his, there's different versions of the story, but one of them goes like this. So he's at his house, and this guy comes to the door, and the guy is kind of a wild man. He's disheveled and wild hair and ragged clothes and piercing, intense eyes. The guy comes in and he takes Rumi's books that Rumi had inherited from his father. And you know, that was before the printing press. So books then were written by hand. Every book was an incredible treasure because it was written by hand. So this wild man comes into Rumi's house and he takes those books and tosses them into the water, into a fountain. But Rumi, being the well-mannered, cultured person that he was, didn't go bazonkers. He said to this man, "May I help you? What's going on here?" This man was Shems of Tabriz. And Shems, if Shems were to come today, what he'd do is not just the books, he'd throw all of the devices. He'd throw the computers in the water, the iPads, all in the junk. Toss it all, get rid of it all. And what Shems said is, do you think you're living? You got your nose in your books, that's where you're getting your knowledge from? Get rid of it. Come alive. Connect with reality. Come awake. You're sleeping, Rumi, says Shems. What? And this really, this got Rumi's attention. And when he looked in Shems's eyes, he saw the light there. He saw that Shems was really alive. And from that time on, Rumi and Shems were soulmates. They were totally connected. Rumi found in Shems a connection with mystery, with the divine, it just lifted Rumi. He thought he knew a lot, and he did. But it was a different thing to connect heart to heart, mind to mind, soul to soul with another human being like he did with Shems. And it was spectacular. And they spent all their time together and just talking and being and walking in nature and sitting in silence and communing with the great mystery. Those words that we just heard in the song, Lift Every Voice, there's some lines in there. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. The places, our God, where we met thee. Meeting God, meeting the mystery, connecting with the infinite. That's what happened. That's what happened when Shems and Rumi met. And so they spent all their time together, and it was wonderful, except we had a slight problem. Rumi had many students. He had many followers. He was a responsible person in town, and there he's schlepping around with this wild-looking man with crazy hair and ragged clothes, and all of his cultured students and followers and all the other theologians and jurists were like, "What's up, man? What? Come on, what are you doing? You need to dump him. I mean, he's a loser. That's Shems. Stop it." But Rumi did not stop it. He knew this hard connection, this total connection with this other being. And Rumi gave up a lot of his responsibilities. He stopped showing up to preach. He stopped teaching and spent all of his time with Shems. Well, Shems disappeared one day. There's different stories. No one really knows, but some people say it was one of Rumi's sons who was so jealous and upset that this fine, upstanding man of Rumi, his father, was misbehaving. And so Shem's left. Did someone take him away and kill him? We don't really know what happened. But what we do know is what happened to Rumi after that. He was heartbroken. This human connection with the divine that he had blossomed in the friendship, the sacred friendship with Shams, was gone. And so what did Rumi do in his pain? He did what he did when he was a child. He put a hand to the sky and a hand to the earth, and he turned. And he turned. And he turned. And in the room where he was, there was a pole, and some say he turned around that pole. And as he turned, words came from his mouth. And his students wrote down what Rumi was saying. These books that we have of Rumi's poetry, he didn't write them himself. He spoke them out of his pain as he moved. And someone else wrote them down. Hear this poem from Rumi. The cloud weeps and the garden grows. The baby cries and the mother's milk flows. The nurse of creation has said, let them cry a lot. This rain, weeping, and sunburning twine to make us grow. Keep your intelligence white hot and your grief listening, so your life will stay fresh. Cry easily, like a little child. So in his pain, Rumi cried, and he moved. And what we have now, some of you have heard of the whirling dervishes. That is the order of Sufis that Rumi started in his pain. There's a whole entire order of people who follow in Rumi's footsteps. Have you ever seen them? They perform now. They travel around the world and they perform. Hear those words again in the poem I read a minute ago from the guest house. This being human is a guest house. Every day, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house of the furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. So Rumi had a rough life in many ways. He had a wonderful life and a rough life. Here are these words from Rumi. Know that one day your pain will become your cure. These pains you feel are messengers. Listen to them. So how about you in this interesting time that we are in? Can you relate to Rumi's life, the disruption, the pain? And what are you doing with that? There's a tendency when we're in pain to close up, sit, be immobile. Rumi says, wake up, shake it up. Hear these words from Rumi. Rise, move around the center as pilgrims, being still as how one clay clod sticks to another. In sleep, whereas movement wakes up and unlocks new blessings. So how about you? Are you sitting on the couch like a couch potato stuck in the distress of this interesting time we're living in? Rumi says, shake it up, move, move. Let whatever be real. Weep. If you need to weep, weep. If we were here in person, I would hand out Kleenex and say, cry, for goodness sakes, do not cut off your feeling, but let that be the ground from which new things grow. The cloud weeps and the garden sprouts. The baby cries and the mother's milk flows. The nurse of creation has said, let them cry a lot. We live in an interesting time, as did Rumi. Let it shape us, but not crush us. And what's really interesting about Rumi, when he died in Konya, Turkey in 1273, his funeral was attended by people of all faiths. Muslims, Jews, Christians, pagans, Sufis. All kinds of people came. Because Rumi got to the core. There is a light and a love that is at the center of all the religions, that one light, that one truth. And Rumi got there. His mystical experience with Shams brought him to a place of depth and connection that is beyond words, beyond religion, beyond texts, beyond ideologies, beyond theory. Hear these words from Rumi. Out beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too big to talk about. Ideas and language, even the phrase each other, don't make sense anymore. Out beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. I'm wearing a stole with symbols of the different world religions. And when we encounter these religions on the surface, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, whatever, there's lots of arguments, lots of differences, lots of wars. But if you go deep into the core of any one of them, you come to the one light, love. And for Rumi, his relationship with Shams brought him there, to the divine, what we just sang about in that beautiful song. One light, one love. And when we get to this place, the boundaries, they evaporate. And so Rumi, when he died, his memorial service, his funeral, was attended by people of all religions because he lived here in the light, in the love, not on the surface where there's argument and fighting. And to this day, I'll show you a few images. This is an image of Rumi. And to this day, this is the whirling dervishes, that order that he founded inadvertently in his pain, as he moved in his pain and started dancing and poetry spouting from him. This movement of the whirling dervishes came. And this is his mosque, or I mean his burial, his tomb in Konya, Turkey. And another image of his tomb. Rumi's tomb is the visited of any saint by people of all religions. Rumi belongs to everyone because he lived from that place of the infinite, of love, of light, of truth. And so people flocked to Rumi's because it didn't matter what religion you were, you found God there. Here are these words from Professor Majid Naini. He says, Rumi's life and transformation provide true testimony and proof that people of all religions and backgrounds can live together in peace and harmony. Rumi's vision, words, and life teach us how to reach inner peace and happiness so we can finally stop the continual stream of hostility and hatred, and we can finally achieve true global peace and harmony. Rumi's life. And as I said, he's the most popular translated into English poet in America. And he's a Muslim, go figure. So how about you? Rumi had an interesting life, a challenging life, from childhood and in his adulthood. But he was not crushed by it. The pain opened him up, helped him come to the depth of his being. It opened his heart so that he could connect out beyond the ideas of right doing and wrong doing. There's a field, I'll meet you there. Not the argument, not the small mind, but the expansiveness of an awakened heart. Here are these words from Rumi. Where there is ruin, there is hope for a treasure. Where there is ruin, there is hope for a treasure. How about you in your life? Do you see ruin around you in some aspects of your life? Expect treasure. Expect something wonderful to be reborn from that. How about you? Are you letting yourself sit and be crushed? Rumi says, wake up, move around the center as pilgrims. Being still is how one clay clod sticks to another in sleep, whereas movement wakes us up and unlocks new blessings. What we need in our world is a change of consciousness. As Einstein said, you cannot solve the problems with the same thinking that created it. We need a transformation of our consciousness to address the myriad challenges of our time. And Rumi is a beacon for what we need. Go deep into the center of your beings, dear friend, and find your heart, find the love there that is beyond the arguments, that is the connection with Source. Be real about what you're feeling and let your tears flow, let your joy flow, and connect. Connect. In these interesting times, take the messages from Rumi's life. Get off the couch and move around. And from Shem's, toss your junk, turn the damn things off. Toss it into the water, get rid of it like Shem's did. A great gift he gave to Rumi. Be real with who you are and what's going on. And let me end with these words from Rumi. Where there is ruin, there is hope for a treasure. Where there is ruin, there is hope for a treasure. May it be so, blessed be. Amen.